do you want to kick her off?
Yeah, let's open with prayer. So glad you all are here with us tonight.
Yep. You can be picked up here, Ken.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yep. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the fact that you walk beside us each and every day. We praise you for, in changing times, the doors that you open so that the church can continue the mission given to us by your Son, Jesus Christ, to share everything that he taught us, to go and baptize in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, to make disciples of all nations. And we thank you that you are allowing the church to use a new tool, a new technology in social media and digital resources so that we can continue to be your hands and feet and share your love in the world. We pray, Lord, that you would be with us tonight as we talk about not only how the church as a whole can use these tools, but how each of us as individuals can invite others to come and see all that you are. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Amen. Well, this is class number 3, is that right? Class number 3, I think it is. 3? Post-COVID church. And yeah, we're so glad to have Alexis Williams. Not many of you may realize that she wears 2 hats at the church. Before she was the online minister, where most of you know her, she was hired as our associate communications director. And so I got to begin working with Alexis in that capacity as she helped Lori Carter, our director of communications, and our team with kind of some of what we're going to be talking about tonight, and how do we use this new field of technology to reach people with the love of God. I want to start with the devotion tonight. How many of you have had any experience with a street preacher, or we used to call them a pit preacher back in the day, because we had a place on our college campus that was it was literally like a brick pit in the center of the campus, and this gentleman would stand there and preach. Gary Birdsong was his name, and he had big signs that would talk about all the things that God hates. And he would list them, and then people would come and just argue with him, and they would make a point to come and have these conversations. I guess you could call it that. But for many people, that was their impression of Christianity. Any other experiences you've had of a street preacher, somebody on the corner, good, bad, or indifferent, of sharing the message of Christ?
Remember, there was a guy who went to a USC football game, and as all the tailgaters were going down to this big event, he was on the street, he was on the sidewalk in a little bit of a soapbox, floppy Bible, and he was preaching, and no one paid attention to him.
Really?
No one engaged him. They just kind of walked around him, and even though he was foaming at the mouth and he was denouncing everything, it was pretty much background noise that no one even engaged him.
Interesting. Just tuned him out. Okay.
There's a guy uptown Charlotte, pre-COVID, Trade Tryon.
Right in the middle.
Yeah, in fact, there was an article in the paper about him. He went up to Washington when some of the stuff was, but he was Jesus saves. He was a real positive. Jesus loves you. It was less fire and brimstone. It was more a message of love.
Okay, interesting. So he brought that more the message of grace. Okay.
I say most that I'd run into earlier, I haven't seen many in recently, would focus more on law than gospel.
Right, condemnation.
Yeah, right. And for this guy that I had experience with, he was not background noise. For some people he was, but there were a lot of people, as I said earlier, that they enjoyed bantering with him and being able to, and the more they did it, the more it fed. He enjoyed giving right back. But it used to be that in order to, if you're going to be on a college campus, say, or center of a city, you had to go and one of the ways is inject yourself, be physically there, and either you're getting people's attention by being so confrontational that you're going to maybe force people to stop and argue with you, or you might get their attention by being so loving and that message. St. Paul does that in the book of Acts when he's going out on his missionary journeys, and he goes over into Europe, down into Greece, modern-day Greece. He, in chapter 17, he comes to the greatest center of debate and learning and philosophy in the known world at the time, the capital of Greece, which is Athens, right? And Paul goes into the very middle of the city, and he begins to talk to them, to preach to them about Christ. And he builds his message, he shares his sermon. At the very end, he talks to them about the resurrection, which is Paul's favorite thing to talk about. It's what makes Christianity so earth-shattering. It's this idea that Jesus, the Son of God, was raised up to new life. And at the end of chapter 17, after Paul has come into the middle of their life and shared this message, this is the response. Chapter 17, verse 32. When they heard about the resurrection of the dead, some of them sneered, but others said, "We want to hear you again about this subject." Some of them sneered, some of them said, "Oh, this he's completely lost it. I mean, we have no interest in hearing more about this foolish talk of resurrection." But others of them, it grabbed them. Something about Paul planted a seed, and it led to them wanting to hear him again. Today, we don't have to go into the center of the city. We don't have to go and, you can, but we don't have to do that to be able to meet people with the message of resurrection about Christ. Today, we have this incredible technology that allows us every day to place seeds of faith. And we'll find as we do that work, some people are going to sneer. Some people will say, I don't want any of that. In fact, but sometimes that can be the beginning, too, of a path to faith. When people do push back, because that can invite the conversation to begin. Others say we want to hear more about this subject right off the bat. Let me ask you, because tonight we're going to be digging into this part of post-COVID, which we know is so permanent, the digital arena. When social media first started to become a thing, in what ways did you use it? What were some of the early experiences you had when that friend said, "Hey, did you hear about this thing?" And how did you use it?
What would have been the first format? Would it have been my page or MySpace? MySpace?
Email?
Instant Messenger, right? Yep. What was somebody said another one?
Email.
Yeah, email.
Well, there was online relay chat before there was instant message.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it ugly from the beginning?
Yes.
Yes?
Oh, yeah.
They had interest chat rooms, on different topics was the way it was structured. So more like, I guess, a Quora today.
Yeah.
Where you've got specific interests, and so people, you had an interest and you entered that room, but then they had, of course, the private messaging and all that kind of stuff that you could do as well.
Remember when Zuckerberg initiated Facebook? Who was it for early on?
College.
College kids. You had to have a college email to have a Facebook account.
At Harvard.
At Harvard, yeah. And the reason, there were not holy motives in why they did that. They wanted to be able to rank members of the opposite sex and use Facebook as a way to do that. That was their impetus. And I'll be honest, the reason I got on Facebook is I wanted to look up pictures of a girl I had met on campus, see what, and get to follow up on that. And I had my email, my UNC email that I had to log in, and I think it was like 4 or 5 years later that I realized, I don't have to have that college email anymore. I can just use this current one that I still use. Yeah, but Scott asked me a good question. So social media, what were some of the positives of it? Whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, MySpace, what are some of the positives that you found in your life with this? this.
My class got their 50-year class reunion put together on Facebook.
The 50th reunion, yeah. So connecting with people. Definitely. What else?
Finding out what others are doing.
Yeah, you can stay tuned in to people who have moved away, know what they're up to. Just staying in touch in general is huge.
I think if you've had something going on in your life that rather than making 12, 18, 20 phone calls, you say, you know, I was hospitalized, or the baby came, or we moved. And it's almost as if you can, you know, I think when you write that, you expect, well, I posted it.
Right? It's official.
It says everybody should have heard it by now. So get the word out.
Yeah, even that phrase, Facebook official, has become a phrase that whether it's a relationship or a job or a move or whatever. Any YouTube fans? People that like, yeah, I think
Home repairs.
Yep.
home
Absolutely.
repairs.
Absolutely.
A huge benefit for a lot of people is the sheer amount of content. You can go, if you want to learn about a subject, whether it's home repairs or baking or travel, you can find video after video of content right at your fingertips for free. What about another one I thought of is social media has given all of us a platform to share. Anybody can be a publisher. Anybody can be a public speaker to some extent with this. All right, let's switch gears. How about negative? What are some of the negatives with the social media, digital world?
When your friends are writing political things back and forth, and then comments get dicey if you want to go down and read them.
Right. So divisiveness and relationships have been really broken up over that.
How about, you know, given birth to a lot of predatory things. I also know as a parent, it increased my parenting load, having to parent all those things that we weren't even sure about.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's a big one. So security and boundary issues for parents and for other people. Yeah, good.
The cyberbullying, you can just, you know, lash out and be nameless, faceless, mean words.
Right.
What about the whole thing with the black hole? I mean, how many people kind of get onto it and they look up, it's been 2 hours? Where'd those 2 hours go?
Oh, yeah.
And the data that's increasingly supporting that is showing that there are some real addictive behavior associated with that. That there's this everything down to the chemical level where that hit it, you get that like on Facebook and there's a shot of dopamine release. It can be a black hole for sure.
I was gonna add that it opens up the window for a lot more comparison, and what you're comparing to is the best features of people's lives, so it's not even a realistic comparison to be making.
That's good.
Yeah, my cat's not nearly as cute as your cat.
That's it.
Is that what you meant? Okay.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that one because on the other hand, though, we find there's a flip side to that. I want to come back because that's really good. Play with that a little bit later. Let me show you this chart here. So this, what I'd like to show you here. This is the rise in the use of social media. Sharing the screen here. So if you look up on your up top, if you look back to 2006 on the far left side, this is the percentage of U.S. adults who are using at least one social media site. It's down around 6% in 2005, 2006. By 2020, it shot up to almost 80% of U.S. adults using at least one platform of social media. All right, let me show you now what are the most common social media sites here. Just so we know, where do people tend to be spending their time?
Pastor Drew, can I make a point on that one?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm sure not all of it is explained, but part of it too is with the millennials that grew up with it, coming of age, being adults, being on multiple platforms. that definitely leveled out how many were in the later years.
Hmm.
And then with parents having to figure out what we're doing, you guys getting on it.
Right. So as that age group has grown into it, it's, yeah, become much more.
So at the end of that graph, is that like 80%? Yeah, wow.
It's leveled off. Yeah, yeah, it's not, yeah. It's
There's
leveled.
just not that many people after them.
Well, true.
Yeah, 80% is still pretty high.
Let me share this one with you now. This shows the most popular, I'll move this bar over here. This
What is
shows the most popular social media platform. So where are people spending most time using social media? So at the top you have Facebook, going back to around 2012 as a key leader. We got a little over 50%. That's risen up closer to, closer to 75 by 2019. And then YouTube blows onto the screen 2018 when they really began tracking YouTube. And it's at the top, the lead spot. So YouTube is the biggest. And then you jump down and you have this next cluster with LinkedIn, Pinterest, Instagram. The one that's gone up the most in that group is Instagram. And what you find is, again and again, what happens is younger generations are on a social media platform. Their parents and older generations get on it, and then it's no longer cool. So they leave it and they're going to a different one, and then the older generations come to that one, and then so you're getting this progression. So we know that over time, eventually Facebook's going to start to go down in usage as those generations come up. The third thing I wanted to show you, but I can't get it to load now, is about parenting struggles, like you mentioned, Luann, that when it comes to what parents are finding are their main challenges that the church then would have an opportunity to help them with in the post-COVID era, a huge one is social media and the amount of engagement with online. Positive, knowing that there's so many positives, as you just mentioned, but that there are also those negatives as well. So tonight what we want to do, again, looking at those two articles from Carrie Newhoff, is ask the question, what should our Christian relationship be with these tools? And that's why one of the reasons I'm so glad to have Alexis here to weigh in on this. Do we pull out? Do we just say, nope, we're going to just leave that to the world around us? Or how do we engage it in a healthy way? Pastor Scott.
Man, there's a text here from Colossians that I think is insightful for those times in which we find new ways to communicate. It says this: be wise in the way you act towards outsiders. Be wise in the way that you act towards outsiders. And then here it is: make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be always full of grace. That should be the tagline of Facebook, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Let your conversation always be full of grace, seasoned with salt. Now, what does that mean? Grace and seasoned with salt.
The idea of grace and truth go together. I kind of see it as truth. I mean, I think you owe it to yourself to be truthful, and
Yeah.
at the same time, not be a propagator of falsehoods. Any of that.
Is that what seasoned with salt? Could be. Because when I think about salt, when Jesus says you're the salt of the earth, it's got really,
Preservative.
yeah, it's got two meanings. The one is the preservative before refrigeration, salt your beef and it lasts. But the second is that salt added taste. We get the word salary from a derivative of the word salt, because there was a time in which the Roman soldiers would receive part of their salary in pouches of salt. Because when you think about what we get to eat every day, going to the grocery store and what are you in the mood for, and they had the same grub for breakfast, lunch, dinner, if they were able to eat 3 times a day. It's the same stuff. But you take the same stuff and you add a little salt to it, it brings out a different flavor. So he says, you know, let your conversation always be full of grace. Got that. Seasoned with salt. And I guess what I'm taking away from that, tasteful. Tasteful. That we can easily get vulgar. We can easily go into the gutter. Seasoned with salt.
But
You
salt,
need to answer everyone. So let me ask you this question here. Go way back, and what have been the changes of communication that the church has been able to capitalize? And I want to go way back when it was, you know, oral traditions sitting around the campfire. Suddenly, instead of talking about the latest hunting trip, they start talking about the maker of the heavens and earth. And the early believers said, well, this will be the primary way in which we pass the traditions down. So they're oral tradition. And then people started writing them down. And so at first it was just pages of, you know, papyrus. And we said, wow, this is going to capture it. This is going to capture it down. And so the early books, you know, probably around 1000 BC, they were starting to actually write these oral traditions down. Then I think maybe the next one is the scrolls, in which you could put them on longer sheets and you could transport them. You could pull them out to read them. They'd be more durable. Okay, now start from there, go a little bit more. What else came along the way that we capitalized on and used for the greater good?
The printing press?
Printing press.
Even before that.
Printing press. Anything between scrolls and printing presses.
You had scribes. I mean, you had people copying, you know.
Yes. You had the scribes saying, wow, these scrolls are really useful. Let's make a business out of it. And the scribes then were writing these things down. And then they went from the scrolls to the books. And these were very expensive. But I'd also add literacy. I mean, there was only a handful of people that could actually read. And pretty soon, if we're going to spread the word, we need to get people to read and write. And then the printing press came along, to be sure. This was a huge, I mean, Martin Luther at one time, 2/3 of all the printed material in Germany came from his pen. 2/3. He flooded this new technology, much like somebody flooding, going viral on the internet. All right, so we're up to the printing press. We're up to late, mid-1400s. What else?
Well, along with that, the translation to different languages so that more people.
Good, the translation. Rather than just saying it has to be in Hebrew, has to be in German, has to be in Greek. We realize, no, the Word of God transcends all languages. So yeah. So now we've got even like jars done in Waxhaw that makes its living translating into different languages. What else?
Radio?
Good. The radio. To be able to hear the Word of God. Now think back with Billy Graham, you know, probably one of the pioneers in doing these televised, first radio, and then televised revivals, these tent meetings. At one point, people were saying, can you actually experience a Billy Graham revival through the radio? And of course, there were some naysayers that says, no, you have to actually be there. And after, well, no, it's pretty powerful. What about with TV? Can you actually experience it? Yeah, you can experience it. And then we had to have the question, all right, you can experience it. What about, can you actually worship together through TV? And there were those who said, no, you can't. Can you pray with somebody on TV? And all those 1980 televangelists, put your hand on the TV and send me $20. Yes, it worked. And so now we're kind of at that point with going even further with online. So yeah, radio, and then we have the TV. Anything else? What's next?
Done.
Yeah, electronic. So now we can open up that little phone or a pad and get whatever translation you want in whatever language you want. And now we can listen to anybody we want. And so we kind of wrestled with that at Christ Lutheran, as many other churches did. Sure, you can put your worship service online. And is it authentic? Yes, it's authentic. You talk to people. Yes, I actually worship. Can you pray? Yes, you can pray. Can you have communion? No, you cannot have communion. And then we rethought that. Take out the bread, hear these words. Take out the wine, drink and be healed. And those who are receiving at home, many are saying, yes, this is authentic worship experience. So I guess that is to say, going back to that text, make use of every opportunity. Make use of every opportunity. Let your conversation be full of grace, seasoned with salt. Now, to follow up what Drew is saying, there's a lot of negative examples, right? But Jesus said, as he sends his disciples out to use every opportunity, he said, be wise as serpents and what?
Gentle as doves.
Yeah, innocent or as gentle as doves. Wise as serpents. Know how much power this has, how much damage it can do. Be innocent or gentle as doves, knowing that we can use it for the good, with a sense of innocence about it. Yeah. So, we had online worship for, I don't know, we've had it 4 or 5 years at Christ Lutheran. Primarily, it was a spectator sport. All right? If you were on vacation, you're at a soccer tournament, you were sick, you could go and watch 1 or 2 cameras at a worship service. And it was really, really just kind of a spectator sport. You were watching it as a distance. Well, then we had this wild idea that this is only going to expand. Let's bring in an online minister. We'll find one who knows the church, who was grown up in the church, who was baptized, confirmed, and married in the church. One who does this for a living in her outside secular world. And then one who has that engaging personality. So the beginning of 2020, I connected with Alexis and asked her to consider doing this. And I got a grant from the ELCA. I was honest. I was upfront with them. But here was my hook. Here's my hook. I said, you give me money to supplement, not pay for the whole, but supplement the salary. And we will be a teaching church. You let us try to figure this thing out. And we'll go out and engage with other churches around the country and share the vast knowledge that we have. So, Alexis, I know you're not up in the outline yet, but I'm going to turn to you right now and maybe talk about your job description when I brought you on board. The original job description.
It was a 3-part plan. Online worship on Sunday morning was the first part, and that was to engage more and make it less of a spectator sport, more interactive, more taking questions from, asking questions, getting feedback, and getting the feel for the people at home. And the second part was doing an online, probably through Zoom or something similar, midweek Bible study, similar to what we're doing. now, but little did we know. And the third part was to break down geographically where the folks who will be worshiping online are living, centered, and have in-person meetups, get to know the people that live in your neighborhood kind of thing, who are worshiping together online.
Yeah, this third part wasn't necessary for Bible study or for prayer. It could be, but we were thinking about socially, like go to a Starbucks or go to a brewery and just kind of meet with people that live in your geographical area and see who you worship with. And it certainly has more. Now, true to my word, Alexis and I have had several Zoom training with senior pastors around the country that want to learn about best practices for online ministry. And whenever I've got a colleague of mine around the country that says, you know, what are you doing for this or that and online, I give them Alexis's email address, and they connect there. And so she has been a trainer across the country too for those churches that are asking for our help. So we've been doing this, and it actually has been working pretty well. How many of you have engaged with Alexis online here?
Some of you have.
Some of you? All right, good deal.
Generally, what have you noticed the conversations, the comments have been like? Since you started in the role, I was just curious, have you noticed people have become more and more open to sharing things and telling about themselves?
Yes, it has evolved from just, I'm here, to people get real funny and they're in their pew, wherever they are, and they announce their family members that they've also, because I always start each service saying, good morning, you know, welcome, and while you're gathering your communion elements, if you're gonna celebrate with us, let us know who's here, who's with you, you know, and so I've had a lot of that, but the fun thing to see evolve is everybody in the chat now speaking to each other, not just me, but addressing each other. And then there's been several members, Cindy Moss is an example, who gets on there and welcomes everybody after I do, because I individually welcome anyone who comments to me, and you can't really see who everyone is, but if you're friends on Facebook with someone, you can see that they're watching. So if she sees friends she has that I don't, she will call them out too, and then everybody. So the majority of the commenting is still friendly.
Touching base.
Yeah, touching base, catching up.
So when I write a sermon on Thursday and I give it to Mark Johansson for the visuals, I also give it to Alexis as well. And oftentimes I will give her like 2 or 3 questions from the sermon that that she could post somewhere during the sermon. Like, did you ask, you need a D word for don't know?
I did.
All right.
I did.
And there were a couple other ones like that as well. Maybe which one of those 4 Ds that you're on right now in terms of understanding your purpose. So are they responding to those things?
It depends on the question. Now, someone actually told me that she doesn't really respond during the sermon because she's focusing.
Oh, good for her. That's my favorite.
So, but there have been a few questions that have been so pointed, or yes or no, or it depends on the topic, because you've had some pretty deep topics recently, and they will. But sometimes the D words weren't flowing. But
No, did it flow?
Too, so.
I couldn't think of one in the, okay.
And I share the links. Sometimes you've caught me going to get a coffee. Oh no, he's asking for good service, kids TV.
Now, can you tell when people get on and when they get off?
There's a number up in the corner. It's sometimes difficult to focus on Facebook and YouTube simultaneously, but people don't tend to chat on YouTube with me, because that's the easiest one to cast to your TV, and then you can't see the chat. So, but some people even tell me, we're here and we're gonna watch on TV. But I can see, and the number, but with worship, the number's been staying the same throughout most of the service.
Oh, they don't just.
At the beginning, people would drop off after the sermon, but I think the music carries us through
through the rest of it,
All right.
especially these videos
Yeah,
the
yeah.
music teams put together.
Do you have any questions for Alexis in terms of online?
Yeah, would you appreciate an email that would say, hey, we're at the traditional worship as opposed to the sidebar thing?
An email, oof. You can't, I want to know who's there, and it's very hard, but I do realize that a lot of people, because there's usually lately up to 100 people that are live on Facebook, and I'm speaking to 15 to 20, and I know there are people that don't want to, that it's just not their thing to type while they're watching, and that's fine too. We're not going to get everybody, but any way that you want to communicate is fine. I mean, I had some Houston man who was texting me. I don't even know how he got the number. So that's fine. But
Oh,
it doesn't
okay.
matter. Anyway, communication is great.
Other questions for Alexis?
What are the numbers like, after the live version, how many people will tune in and watch it versus how many are watching it live?
That's a good question. It gets very complicated looking at the analytics, and that's something I'm learning from scratch. But we usually Facebook has a lot of different numbers. You can go so low as how many people watched for just 3 seconds. And that's where we start. I have paid for a nominal fee, very, very small fee, most weeks to boost our worship on Facebook. And it goes to everywhere from 650 to 1,100 people a day. And that means it will show up in their feed. We're paying for it to show up in their feed. So we will get up to 5,000 views church-wide as far as Concord South and Providence. I'm starting to narrow that down to who's watching at least a minute or more, which is about the best you can do on Facebook. I don't remember what that was, maybe 400 or 500 total. And then we have others on YouTube, and it gets a lot. It gets 400 or 500 people, and then we're not paying for anything on there. So it goes out, and people refer to it the rest of the week. So they're not just watching on Sunday.
Anything else for Alexis? Questions right off the bat? How many of you like going to the mall, or did like going to the mall?
Let's see.
A couple, all right, yeah. We went every Saturday as a kid. We would go out to dinner with my extended family, all lived here in Charlotte. I had both sets of grandparents. We'd meet up, go to dinner, then we'd go to the mall. And we never bought anything. We would just go for the experience. Guess it was a pet store, so we would go and visit the pets. Then we'd go to the toy store and look at all the toys. Then we'd go to it was part of what we did.
Which mall was it?
South Park. And then we also went to, we hit a mall. South Park, we went to South Park back in the day before it was the nice mall. This is the nice mall now, but it was pretty low key back in the day. And then there was a mall in Gastonia we would go to. It's still there right off of I-85 South. And so the first article we're looking at tonight is the church going to continue to act like a shopping mall in an age of Amazon? There's so many benefits to the mall. You can see, you can touch it, you can try it on, the outfit before you buy it. I always hated doing that as a kid. You have to try on things. But there's the benefits, right? And so this first article is going to really explore this question of what are these real benefits to moving into this digital world and embracing it. And the first one that Carrie lifts up in this article we sent out, he says there's some things you can do in the brick and mortar building that you can't do online, but the opposite is also true. There are things that we're finding that people can do online that are different. Here's an example. People are oftentimes willing to be more honest and more real because it's easier to say something when you don't have to look somebody in the eye. That's a personal struggle. As weird as that may sound to some of us, it's true. I mean, you you don't have the awkwardness of sharing that when you're looking somebody in the eye. You can, it's a little bit less direct in that way. And I think we've seen that already with what people are willing to post on Facebook. Negative, on the negative end, they'd say things that they would never say to somebody if they were looking at them in the eye to eye. But the positive is also true, that people have shared things about their life they wouldn't necessarily do in person. They're willing to be vulnerable, which is a huge relational key. You're not really forming a real bond if you can't be vulnerable to some extent with other people. Share them, let them into your life. Another one is that fact checking. There's studies that have found that millennials, about 40% fact check every sermon that they listen to. So if the pastor says,
Bring it.
if they say that, yeah, then just know, we have to know now as we're preaching. They've got the phone there and they're typing in. Did so-and-so really say that? Did that really happen that way? So it's also going to compel us as preachers to make sure we're on our game and we're being factual. And then finally, the creativity. Last fall, we had Bob McKillop, the Davidson head basketball coach, come for an event. And he was able to hop on and join us via Zoom right after practice, on a weeknight, 2 weeks before his season started. Could he have done that in person? Yeah, but how much more of an ordeal would it have been for him to drive down and, roll out the red carpet, which we would have done for him, and just a much bigger affair. But the versatility that we can have online of having him come and be with us was really, really cool. So you can be creative with your content. Those are 3 things that online allows you to do that the shopping mall approach doesn't necessarily do as easily or as smoothly. Alexis, you want to take the next couple?
Well, I was gonna say to the creativity, because I'm working so closely with the music team and the tech team, and they're doing all of this. We wouldn't be able to have Ryan Deal and some of the other singers, Sherm Finer, they're participating in Spirit Song now, and via these videos that they're sending in. The ones who are comfortable doing that, it's been amazing. The feedback that I get, those are some of the most looked at, shared, watched social media posts that I'm doing now. Right? The Friday replays that I do of the videos that are on Sunday. It's so easy to do because it's not something recorded live on Sunday. We just pull it out of the Dropbox and put it on Facebook, and people love it. So.
And a way to end your week with something.
Yes, we all need it. I was gonna say, let's see, everyone you want to reach them on YouTube. This is all online somewhere. YouVersion, that's it. The Bible app. We had an article. I was gonna show that technology and millennials.
Can we pull that up?
You have that?
Sure.
I know we've talked about millennials a lot because they're crazy. I have a brother who's a millennial.
Aren't you very close to him?
Very close. I don't identify.
No, don't.
I'm like a year or 2 off, and
Big difference.
big difference.
Yeah.
So, and Drew kind of touched on this too about the fact checking, and they are using technology. Bottom shift.
Sorry, it's kind of hard to watch.
Being someone who grew up here in the same church, never having really looked anywhere, it's kind of foreign to me, but I totally understand. The number that jumps out to me is 56% of practicing Christian millennials check out a church through their website. And I think that was one thing I wanted to touch on just a little bit, was our new website. Seems to be gaining traction with people. We looked at we have Pro Media, who's now helping us, and we looked at other churches across the country that are actually enticing to younger people, but we still wanted to keep our website to go for the folks who are already members. So it was a very delicate balance. But I think that people, what we're seeing is that they're Googling churches in Charlotte and they're finding us. and our new website, and I think that's really engaging for them. So that's something. And
Let me
then,
stop there a second. We hired these outside consultants to help us revamp our website because we realized we had baby boomers looking at our website, designing our website, and critiquing our website, and all of us baby boomers said, it looks fine to me. And it was a very baby boomer website until Pro Media showed us different examples about what a website can do and who you're trying to target. And so we went through a whole makeover, and they were very helpful in doing that.
and they're teaching us now how to look at the numbers that we see. Google Analytics can be a big rabbit hole, but they're teaching us what's important. You want people to come and stay. You want them to come and go somewhere else within your website. And we're looking at those numbers, and they are encouraging. So we got to keep working on that. So that's one. That just is what stuck out to me on this. And then of course videos. I have in my head wanting to do more videos for our website and more videos for social media of the pastors and their faces. Well, that's swimming around, but we don't have much time. But I know that people just want to click on YouTube and watch a video. I think that when Scott or either pastor, any pastor does a sneak peek, those get a lot of hits and views too, because people like to see what's coming up and they look for it. Consistency is key in what you're posting and what you're sharing with people.
Good.
And I think the biggest thing that I took out of this one little section was that we have to keep the in-person stuff when we can have it more. But even what we're doing now, super personal and expressive, but we also have to really make the digital experience really robust, which I think we're working toward. And I know Mark Laser is a perfectionist, and he's working really hard to make worship as perfect as possible, which I don't personally think it needs to be much better. I mean, other than little technical things here and there, but I think we're doing a good job.
What if that's another boomer mentality? I mean, we grew up in a church that really emphasized high quality in the preaching, in the lights and the music, and we kind of grew up in the 1980s mega churches that were star performances. And I think that, and of course Mark is part of that, as I am as well, but that younger, millennials especially, I don't think they're looking for slick as much as they're looking for authenticity.
That's right.
They're not easily
Yeah.
shanghaied.
They're not easily Shanghai says, oh, they got a nice production here, but is it real?
They want the meat of it. They do.
Yeah. So that might be different. All right.
I have a little bit of a counter though.
Yeah.
I feel like some of it is about the experience, especially as more millennials are drawn to the more non-denominational, air quotes, churches that are having the big worship, and a lot of it feels more like a concert. Like, I think some of it's more of an experience driven.
Yeah.
Yeah, the music would be solid, and they whole vibe.
It's high quality. It's high quality. But what I would add to that is the difference between the right thing that's in music. I'm thinking about, when I was a kid and you had maybe the Osmonds or the Jackson 5, they all had the same jumpsuit on, and they had the whole same look, and they had the same dance. And then, of course, now they'll go out in their own grunge or whatever they're wearing. It just happens, I'm in concert tonight, I'm not gonna put on a suit, but whatever t-shirt that I've got ripped that I've got on today, I'll go perform. I think what we're also seeing with that non-denominational is that the choirs are not all in the robes. We don't have spirit song with a theme color for today. It is, a pastor with ripped jeans or a t-shirt. It's a soloist that comes out here with just kind of a cap on, and so there's some authenticity rather than slick.
I
But I think the ironic thing about that is that look, the ripped jeans and that can almost become a quote uniform.
Right.
That if a person, if that's not you and you're trying to do that, man, people, I think they see through that too, right? The point, be yourself. I mean,
That was it. I remember going to a conference several years ago, and the panel had about 6 of these 30-year-old megachurch pastors. They were talking about, the best practices, and they said exactly that, Drew. He said, you can't try to copy this church, you can't copy that church, you can't go to a conference and say, hey, we just got to transplant that here. You got to be yourself. And they got done with that spiel, and no lie, I raised my hand and I said, I hear you, because I'm like 20 years older than these guys. I hear you saying you got to be yourself, you got to, but I look at the 6 of you and you all look alike to me. You're all the same age, you all got jeans on, you got the plaid shirt, and you got the goatee going. You all look alike to me. So is there any hope for a 50-year-old trying to break into this whole mold? So, oh, no, we're not alike. He's got a red plaid shirt. I got a green plaid shirt. So you're right. But really, if I got in front of this church with some ripped jeans and looked I would look ridiculous.
yeah.
Because it's just not natural. That's the authenticity. Yeah.
I will say I hear this from quite a few families that some places will try to use the slick to cover other potential deficiencies. Like if the message isn't on point, if whatever it is, and so you use slick production techniques and hope that nobody will notice. And the younger generations see through that in a heartbeat. And please forgive me for this, but they can call, I'll say garbage from a mile away. Those kids, they can spot somebody who's trying to be something that they're not.
Absolutely.
They can spot somebody who's not trying to really connect and be authentic from way out, and they will tune out and tune off.
Yeah. All right, so I want to try to make a distinction between adaptation and innovation. You think about when 9/11 hit, and we had to quickly adapt. That is, they shut down all airline travel for a couple of days. They we're going to find whatever country, and we're going to go to war. We adapted quickly. But from that, a lot of adaptation. What was the innovation that came from that?
X-ray machines at the airport.
Right, the whole screening.
Yeah,
The whole screening. Number one, what else do we innovate as a result of that?
You also have like the global passports, right? That people could register some credentials ahead, ahead of time to try to streamline their experience.
Right.
You had the whole development of Homeland Security.
Yes.
So say technology became part of warfare. But they figured out where bin Laden was from a satellite that took a photograph of a guy walking in a compound in Pakistan.
Yeah. Innovation. So here, the point is that it takes a crisis to accelerate innovation. We can adapt all the time. A hurricane hits, a flood hits, we can adapt. And then we go right back to building in the Low Country of New Orleans. All right? So now let's go into COVID. We've had to adapt. That is, we've shut down stores and churches. We've had to wear masks. There's a lot of adaptation. What has been the innovation, not just in church? Maybe let's start outside of church. What has been the innovation outside of church? First of all, a vaccine in 10 months.
Right.
That's huge, and that's going to help future vaccines coming up here. Vaccine. What else outside of church has been innovation?
Online teaching.
Yes, online teaching. Absolutely. We used to have some extension courses here and there that you could pick up online. Boy, that has cranked up the quality significantly.
We love the grocery store. You can order your groceries online through the drive-through,
Yep.
and then they bring it out and load it up. Especially with kids, you don't have to take them in because they want everything. This way you can order it, and they don't get a choice in the matter.
And the DoorDash, all those.
DoorDash, grocery stores.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about all the stores that have filed bankruptcy. J. Crew, Pier 1, J.C. Penney's, maybe?
Well, Bell, just
Yeah.
did this.
Bell.
That's
Of course, they're reorganized.
Reorganized. So the innovation has been, how is our online shopping going to, Amazon has done a very nice job of innovating during this time. It's amazing how many trucks you see every day. All right, now in the church, we have certainly adapted a lot. What are some things that we have innovated, but more importantly, what are some things we need to innovate?
Rebrand.
Drive-through communion. Is that an adaptation or is that an innovation? Yeah, I'm not sure. What was the second?
Rebranding.
Rebranding? What do you mean?
We need to be different. We have to define ourselves differently, of course, and I think we're doing that very well because our numbers, people are staying with us. We've got to, and this is something that needs to be ongoing.
Right.
We can't be the very same traditional Lutheran church all the time. People get tired of it. So we've got to come up with creative ways to make Christianity stick better.
And that website that you use there, Alexis, as an example about without COVID, I don't know if we were really pressed hard to make a change.
I think a big one is, little kids, they have attention spans that are not always very long, and they, if you can use Legos and manage to do a game show and tell a Bible story, and Kristen Rankin and her team with Family Ministry, they're crushing it with the Christ Kids TV. That's a really cool innovation, and how that's been brought together, and the editing of the videos and all those things, the still motion. I don't know if you got a chance to see that for the Christmas season. They had the still motion, so it looked like the figures in the nativity scene were moving and walking, and I mean that is just really using great resources for good.
And that's the difference between innovation and adapting. Drive-through communion, we're adapting because there's going to come a time in which we're not going to do drive-through, but Christ Kids TV is not going to go away. I mean, we're going to be using that resource. Anything else we've been innovating or we need to innovate?
Well, feeding all those people that Amy mentioned in the
Yes.
meeting.
Yep. She's feeding 132 families every week, twice a week. Wow. Wow. Yeah. There's two other things that I mentioned at the annual meeting about that. The big rocks here, Christ Home. That's going to be not an adaptation because it's not going to go away. This is a new way of doing church. More than just watching online by yourself or with your spouse or kids. This is evangelism. Who am I going to invite into my home to watch worship together? It's going to be prayer and worship. We're going to be praying and worshiping together. It's going to be hospitality. About how do I welcome people in? It's going to be fellowship. We're going to be sharing life together here. It's going to be Bible study. That who's ever preaching will be able to provide that half-hour Bible study here. And this is an innovation about how we're going to be moving forward. Now, I want 40 or 50 of you to be Christ home. They're going to welcome unchurched neighbors in or family friends. I got 2 already. 2 of them already responded. So, any other hands yet? Or you want to think about it a little longer? Scott, down in Arizona. You could have a Christ home down in Arizona. That would work out. The next innovation is Christ South Build. We need to design this as a post-COVID, not even church, gathering space, worship community, community gathering space. It's going to be highly tech and yet very accessible. It can't be slick. It's not going to look like a church. There's no steeple or stained glass.
There'll be a cross in it, I hope.
Well, I'll have a cross in my pocket. Is that good? I think we'll have a cross somewhere. We don't know what it looks like yet, but it's going to be innovative.
The studio space is another one that is an innovation that we realize making videos, whether it's a sneak peek every Monday or just we record gospel lessons for Christ Concord each week or so many different uses, but to have a dedicated space where we can, it used to be a closet. I'm pointing to the back of the fellowship hall here, and that was cleaned out, and last year we furnished it and repainted it. It's got great camera lighting. So to have a space where we can devote to doing that good quality, Sam, you were saying, it's got to be quality. It can't look, it can. I was watching a Max Lucado video yesterday, and he had his iPhone on a stand, and it was very shaky, but there were 9,000 views. But still, he's got the clout to be able to do it at a low budget. Respect. But no, I think that too, I think, is an innovation.
Okay. Good, that's what I have.
All right.
Yeah. Scott, when you were thinking about other innovations, I think there are opportunities for what in the teaching space where I operate that we call blended experiences. So you're doing a form of that now, right? Having some pre-reading and then having, the gathering together. Or I was just searching for different opportunities, and I have a friend of mine who's been, searching for podcasts or YouTube videos, to hear positive messages. And as I was doing that, some churches might have a 6-week series, and every Monday there might be a 15-minute teaching by one of the pastors, but then there's follow-up or then an opportunity that's scheduled to have a discussion that follows that 15-minute video or that sets it up or something like that. So having that real-time scheduled, but then on your own time, right, in between, either before or after, is something that I've been seeing more of.
Good.
Alexis, would you lead us into, we had a few questions there, but with the 5 Ds, kind of the brief.
Before we get into the Ds.
Was that?
Before we get into the Ds.
Yeah, before the Ds.
The Ds of digital engagement. So my job goes, well, and it teeters between my communications job and my online minister job, kind of is married together. Digital engagement throughout the week, not just on Sunday morning. I've learned a lot in the last year about social media, mostly Facebook, Instagram. We're gonna hopefully work on some of the other platforms that we do have, because we have a church Pinterest account, and we have a LinkedIn account, we have a Twitter, and of course our YouTube channel, which YouTube is taking care of itself, because just worship, music videos, and Christ Kids TV alone is enough to get a lot of traffic to that site. But there's been just a wide variety of posts specifically on Facebook that I'm doing that some are getting a lot of engagement and some don't get much. I'm still trying to gain traction on my Message Monday because those questions that the pastor asks me to ask on Sunday, I'm then following them up on Monday, mid-morning, posting them on Facebook for further comments. And it's, depending on the question, again, it's been kind of sparse. But if I turn around and post that it's National Dog Day, we will have or chocolate chip cookie day, and we get recipes or something. But that's the beauty of digital engagement. You gotta figure out what your people want to do. And I noticed at the onset of COVID, when I really ramped this up, people weren't weary, but people are not scrolling as much. They're trying to conscientiously stop, put the phone down. So I'm not quite getting as much all the time, but then as usual with Facebook and all of these things, the algorithm shows you what they want to show you. So you're going to see what Facebook wants you to see. So it's just, digital engagement is huge. Yeah. There's a lot of literature and studies behind it to learn more. So,
well, and I think, this is Brad Keller, one of the things that it's both an opportunity for innovation and a bit of a challenge, Scott, is the technology is changing so fast in this area. And we're really going to have to stay focused on what are the platforms that are available. Zoom is fine, but there's so many things that Zoom doesn't do that we need to be able to do with breakout sessions and things like that. I think it's to truly be innovative means we're going to have to really keep our eye on the technology and the opportunities it presents, as well as how do we train, teach the congregation to use them. I mean, I'm confronted with that every day. I do an awful lot of online training and online learning. We hosted a week-long event last year for my company, completely online. And it's really challenging to get people engaged and just to get them to use the technology effectively. So that's going to be a challenge too. Just because we build it doesn't mean that they're going to understand how to use it.
Go back to Paul too, with opening and that passage I read from the book of Acts. When he would go and preach in a city, his goal was never just to, here's Jesus, he's been raised from the dead, see you later, I'm out. No, his goal was to plant, to grow a church. I wear this little bracelet here that's got this fisherman's hook after my namesake, Andrew, the fisherman, brother Peter. That when Jesus calls them to follow him, he says, now I'm going to make you fishers of what? Men, of people. And so I think the exciting part about this and what Alexis is leading us in is everything we post, thinking about that is throwing a fishing hook out in the water. We want to catch some people. And so what's that pathway going to look like to bring them into deeper engagement?
All right, the next D was design. And design really talks about who is your target market. If you're trying to hit everybody, you're going to hit nobody. I mean, I think about some of the clothing stores that are very specialized, either men or women or age group or whatever else. They kind of get their little sweet spot. And I bet if you went to a lot of those stores, not the department stores, I mean, they've got a women's sections of men, but those other ones, I bet they would they knew exactly, the women here are from 35 to 50, and they're professional and whatever else, right? So now we got to talk about a church and balance the same target, who we designed this for, and our Great Commission to go into all the world, to be a place for all people. I'm really struggling with this one. So when we think about Christ South, they They talk about their sweet spot, the design for that. We talk about Christ South as being one for young families. I mean, when the sermon time comes and the kids leave for their kids' sermon, it's just like 40 kids go out pre-COVID. So they really know their sweet spot. And when we think about Concord, these are more mature people. They're not going to have a rock concert going on there that's a strong guitar, lead guitar. It's going to be some blended stuff. They're going to throw in a hymn once in a while. So let me ask you this. Who is Christ Providence designed for? Who is our market?
Isn't it always the people on the we've got to maintain an outside focus, I guess, is where I would lead. I think Christ Online is certainly there, but I mean, I think Providence very much is trying to always look at the outsider, to reach the unchurched.
All right, so number one, our target, our design is not just to transplant Lutherans from Minnesota to become Lutherans in North Carolina. I mean, if you want to be here, that's great. But our website, our worship, our everything else is not designed for the insider member only to come on in. Good. What else?
I think of this church in Charlotte as so focused on the community and helping people whoever they are and wherever they are and however you can. I mean, I've always been really happy about that. All y'all do outside of the church for not necessarily Lutherans, but anybody that needs help.
Good. So the second design for those outside the walls that need help, that need assistance. We talk about going outside the walls without asking anything in return. We don't dangle a food bag. If you come to church, you can have this. We don't dangle something. If you become a member, now you can have it. It's a church that doesn't just serve members only, but outside the community. Now, does that mean we ignore the members? No. But it's got an outward focus both in terms of worship and service. Anything else?
An authentic worship experience that basically fulfills your worship need.
Good. I would agree with that, Ed. One of the taglines, or the tagline that the leadership has now as our kind of filter for this whole year, 2021, is to see Jesus. It comes from the book of John when these Greeks came up to Philip and said, "Sir, we want to see Jesus." So what we're looking at here is people that are not necessarily looking for put in their time or a place to sit in the pew or membership roles, but the experience. So that means whether it's a class or it's worship or even a meeting, there's got to be an encounter with Jesus.
I think corporate too. A large percentage of where we're at, people that are members here, have business people, corporate background, well-educated. There's Charlotte's the second biggest banking center in the country. You know, when I first visited Providence campus 6 years ago, our Cornerstone Cafe area, or even our restrooms, and they look like what you would find in a corporate center. And I think that was probably intentional to make it sharp. It looks sharp, in other words. And I think that was to create that sense of quality, and I think that's a big part. It's often a white collar kind of feel, and that's just, we're in this South Park area. We're kind of in the middle though.
Yeah.
That crescent.
I guess what I'm saying by this whole thing is that when we talk about design, let's not just narrowly focus and define that as by saying We are looking for 18 to 25-year-old unchurched, newly married. There's a whole lot of other ways because Christ Providence especially, we're going to have the joy group and we're going to have a youth group. We're going to have traditional worship and we're going to have contemporary worship. You know, there's got to be a place for everybody. We're going to have longtime Lutherans and, you know, unchurched or not only church coming in too. So we are target. I love what you guys said. In fact, I guess I wouldn't have articulated that well. But that's exactly who we're trying. Those who are not here, we're trying to target to be in here. But not just to get inside of a building, no longer. But that's kind of the whole innovation. It's not about a building. It's not about names on a membership list. It's about we want them here, and I say here, either online or in person to see Jesus, encountering Jesus. I'm going to use that for the next leadership.
Encountering Jesus. So that's the bait. That's the bait on the hook, to catch all the fish. Whoever's not in the bucket already.
Right.
But that leads to the next part, which is we don't want to stop there. We want to go deeper. And so, Alexis, would you dig into the next two Ds?
Yes, I've got discussion and discovery, and I've already talked about discussion as far as the importance of engaging and commenting. But the one that I circled here, the biggest impact you can have on Sunday morning or really at any point with anything that I post or anyone else talks about is sharing. And that's casting the net. I mean, I see on Sunday morning, it's my habit to share all of the Christ Lutheran, my friends might get sick of it, but I share everybody's worship.
You can't get sick of Christ Lutheran.
I know. But then I see other people, so-and-so share. As soon as you share it to your Facebook page, then all of your friends, whom none of us know, then see it. And the same goes for the songs, and we've gotten emails through Mark Laser, gets a lot of emails. Who's that beautiful voice that so-and-so, and people that don't know who they are at all. Like, this is crazy that your church is doing this, and, you know, then they'll tune in for worship the next Sunday. So that discussion, it goes well beyond it. It makes everything more authentic when you're engaging, and I try and comment back to everything I see, and I have other people, and that's why I'm trying to build a team of other people who are cognizant of what's going on the social media so that the conversation continues. So that's crucial. And then discovery, we're building libraries of content, and it says binge worthy, and the one example of that right now is the videos. We have a member who regularly Facebook messages me songs that he saw during worship he wants clipped immediately and put on YouTube. So that he can build his playlist that he has, that he plays in his classroom as a teacher when he's preparing for the day. So his students hear it. That's all of our worship music.
Wow, good.
And so special requests, so that's just one example. But we're going to continue hopefully to build playlists and things where we can just continuously refer people back to get binge-worthy content.
Great. And I think the exciting thing is about all of this is that we're doing this as a staff, but each of us as individuals can do this too. When we share these things, when you share a service or a video on your personal social media sites, that can then lead to this next part, which is Jesus' commission, make disciples. So we've gone from design to discussion to the discovery. And then the way he talks about discipleship, I really like, because a lot of these services today that are not church related, they'll give you there's kind of the free entry taste, whether it's YouTube television or you can try it for 8 days. But their ultimate hope is that you won't stop there. They want you to become a paid subscriber. Well, translate that to church. We want you to become a follower of Jesus, not just kind of a periphery observer. Remember that great, make a follower, not a fan. So the hope is that we're trying to think about, okay, if somebody finds a service online, they've discovered it, they comment on it, then they're checking it out. What's the next step? How do we then lead them to an online Bible study or a Christ home group? And then that's where the discipleship of then translating that into your own giving, your own serving, your own sharing of your gifts with the world can really explode. And then there's a final piece, which is the deployment.
Yeah, deployment. We use that word deployment oftentimes in a military situation. We deploy our soldiers someplace to go. It's like our mission statement: welcome, connect, equip, and send. And it's the deployment, the sending, and this can take all sorts of different forms. I mean, we can think about God has called me to go to a third world country and bring the gospel, but it can be as close as your own back door. Let me ask you a question. Do you think it's easier? And then the follow-up is why. Do you think it's easier to invite somebody to come join you to come to church? Or is it going to be easier to say, here, check out this website link? What's going to be easier?
Well, right now, it's going to be easier to say, check out this website link, because we're supposed to still keep our distance.
Yeah, but I would also say there, Rhett, is that that's not going to go away. That's that whole both and. It's not like, once the vaccine kicks in and herd immunity is in, we can get rid of that silly stuff. We can get rid of Alexis and save some money. That's not going to happen here. I think it's a whole lot easier to say, take a look at this link. Our pastor had a sermon. The music was great. Take a look at that. That's part of the deployment here, to go out into all the world. And I'm hoping that Christ home will be somewhat in between. Not quite as threatening to say, go to that building and I will meet you there at 11 o'clock, but not quite as easy as just sending a link. It can't be that easy. That's almost gutless to do that. Christ home is going to be somewhat in between. All right, you've thought about it. Any volunteers yet? You don't do it on Sunday morning. You can do it on Tuesday night. All right? You can do it on Wednesday night. You can do it out in Wilmington even. All right? Didn't even get a look.
I know.
I know, she's not even looking. So this will be part of the deployment. Here's kind of a cool thing we found in the digital age. 3 in 10 Christians will share their faith through social media. 30%. It's pretty good. But here's the other thing. 60%, almost 60% of non-Christians will say that somebody has shared their faith online with them. It's a powerful tool. It's an innovation. And we're going to figure this out, not just for Christ Lutheran, but so that we can share this with all the others. All right? I'll let you just email me about being Christ home, okay? Just
one of the things that I struggle with, I have all these people that I know, and you look around at them and you sort of ask yourself, which one of these people can be motivated to include the church in their life? Some of them will absolutely be not, some maybe a little, some maybe more. I want to find those people who want to include the church in their lifestyles, and that's difficult.
All right, wrap up?
Yeah, any final questions or thoughts, especially with Alexis?
Hey, Sam.
Hello. I have one more final thought that my gears keep on turning on. I think another challenge of social media, and especially with how people use it and operate it, and particularly the younger generation, is you have to do like quick sound bites. Like people are scrolling. Like at this point, you have to do something that's very visually appealing, lock them in for 2 seconds, and then they're on to the next post. So it's great that we share videos and it's great that we share messages, but maybe how do we give a shorter soundbite to get an attention grabber to then pull them in further?
Boy, you're right, Sam. When I'm going through YouTube and looking for something, some topic, for a Bible study, something, and I see one that says an hour and 18 minutes, I am not going to that one. I am not going, but if it says 10, 6, I'll give you 6 minutes.
Have you ever used TED Talks as a resource?
Oh, they're great. Yeah, they're great.
Is there any data about how many people that become church because of social media?
I haven't heard anything. Would you do research this week, Kathy?
Oh, yeah. I'll bring that back next week.
One of the things that Kerry says that's interesting is he predicts there will be many churches, they're gonna begin without any brick and mortar. It's gonna be entirely online. So you'll have whatever it be called. And then once they get enough of a community built up online, the brick and mortar may come second, which is just, I find that really fascinating. Complete reversal.
Because the geographical, yeah.
And the expense. I mean, you spend so much less to get this community going. They love each other, they love the messages, and they're engaged already. And then you got the buy-in to build the building rather than the other way around. Interesting.
What's coming up next week?
What's that?
What's coming up next week?
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. And we're going to send you an email about it this week.
We continue. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us here tonight.
Thanks, Alexa.
Have a good night. Good to have Alexa join us tonight too as well.
Bye now.